Hey guys, it's Ann. Welcome to my home worm farming channel, and today we're going to take a look at the red wigglers in the worm factory. So as you can see, these worms do not live in my basement. They live up here in the plant room with all the bonsais and houseplants currently. So today what we're going to look at is getting them fed up and see if we can harvest. So let's take a look. All right, that top looks pretty good, doesn't it? And for anybody who's paying attention, this is that activated charcoal that I put in from the electric composter. I'm not sure how long it's been in there, but it's been a good long while. So in case you're wondering what that rabbit poo looking stuff is, that's what it is. It's the activated charcoal that, according to the machine, it told me that it was done, and it lasted about 8 or 9 months, so I thought that was fair and took it out. So I think that that is indeed ready to roll. And this one little worm here, he's going to come with us and go down to the feeding below. And here we are down at the level that we fed previously. I'm going to have to look at the video to see what it is that we did feed, but as you can tell, these stems didn't quite make it. But this is also a good example of what happens in your early spring garden. A lot of people are like, oh, pill bugs are the devil. Well, perhaps in your spring garden, because they do eat vegetation and shred it, but in your compost bin, they are worth their weight in gold. So yes, I do work to avoid having them where my seedlings are. Ooh, this is really wet. However, in the worm bin, I do encourage their presence. I am going to go ahead and take out these ribs because I think this is ready to graduate to the next level. I don't think this needs fed again. I think this can go into resting phase. So I'm going to pull that off, and then we are going to have this go into the resting phase, and the next one down will become the feeding tray now. Okay, this level has never had any people food, and it looks like for the most part it is quite a bit done, but it is amazingly different as far as the moisture goes. I mean, the one before was wet peanut butter. And this one is very dry. You know, it's the difference between the feeding layer and the layers below that we expect to have all of the moisture taken up from the overly wet feedings. So when you're running these tower systems, you know, you do run into that kind of a problem. So let's look at the next layer down that has also never had any people food. Okay, so this one looks like a lot of the castings sifted from above to below. So that's where those castings have come from. I don't think they've probably made many of them in this level. So you can tell this is pretty dry, and quite honestly, it has not reduced any at all, but it has got a decent moisture. I think it could be a little better. So we'll add moisture before we go today. And here at the next to the last layer, same story. It's damp, but oops, looks like we have a little population of worms over here in the corner. Worms do what they want, you know what I mean? A lot of people when they first get into worms, including me, have, you know, always ask 100 questions. Why are my worms doing this? Lots of answers. So down here at the bottom, it is wetter. And you normally associate wetter places with where the worms want to go. So that's why we're seeing more worms down here. Why they travel through very dry places to get to places with no food, I couldn't tell you. But here they are. This is the most recent layer that I added, and it actually looks more done than the one above it. 100% because of the moisture. So if you keep the moisture up, you can run these systems very, very quickly. Let's look at the bottom. As I suspected, with that next to the last layer being super wet, this layer is gonna have worms. So I'm gonna rescue them. Sometimes they don't always have their best interest in mind when they make these decisions to come down to the super dry part. So I'm gonna help them out and move them up a layer, because it is entirely possible that they will get stranded and die down here, and we don't want our little worm buddies to die. We want them to have a nice full life of eating all of our garbage food and making us more worm babies. Okay, that looks like most of them. It's meant, this thing here is meant to be a worm ladder for them to crawl back up should they get down here. But I don't think that works when it's dry, or at least it doesn't seem to. So I'm going to restack this again. You know what? I don't think that one had... I'm going to put this on here. So these little risers here are just to protect the plastic from bowing under the weight of the entire system, because I do run quite a few layers. And then I just stole them from there. So now we got to rob Peter to pay Paul over here. And for some reason, I don't have 4 of them. Okay. We just roll with things here. And then this becomes the feeding layer. But you know what? The last 2 layers, I'm not one to get stuck on formalities of what I think I'm supposed to be doing. I just kind of look at things and say to myself, I think this could be different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, here's the top layer that we potentially were going to harvest, but it is pretty dry. And this is very wet. So I'm going to put these together and make this one. The volume of these layers has reduced because it's taken quite a bit of time to get here, and I don't typically add more bedding over time. Whatever a bin or whatever a layer starts with is what it ends with. So I'm going to put these 2 together and make those the resting time before we go ahead and harvest. So that'll go on top. And this will be the layer that gets fed. There's just not that much in there. What do you guys think? I hate to put a feeding on there and it's just not going to do anything. All right, I'm totally breaking all of the rules. This is why I tell you, worm farming is not an exact science. You just have to kind of roll with what's happening. And what's happening here with me is that one layer just kind of completely dissolved, and this layer can become the feeding layer. Basically, whatever it feels like it is going to do, that's where I roll. There's not a real hard, fast rule. So since the other layer was disappearing, this one becomes the feeding layer. We're gonna go ahead and put this in here because that wet layer is really heavy. Okay, and then this becomes the feeding layer. Today, they're going to get a really strange mixture of food. I made end of the year kimchi, so we've got all of the radish and the peppers and apple peels, etc. here, and then banana. I'll deal with that sticker later. But this is what they're going to get for a feeding this time. So we really have, next time we're going to have to restart the bottom 2 layers because we're down to 3 layers at this point. I'm going to put this back up top. And so this can dry over the next 3 weeks. But that's what I say, you know, when people are like, oh, what does it mean when I tell you that things have become too finished? And this is one of those things where it becomes very fine grained like this. And so that is probably pretty close to pure worm castings when it gets like that. Very fine, very sticky. And if I don't mix this with the drier layer, it is likely to turn into dry little clay balls if I don't. I've had problems in the past where I've, just let the whole thing go too long. Life gets in the way, right? Worms are pretty forgiving, especially red wigglers. So basically what I'm trying to say is that things happen and you just have to be ready to hit it on the fly. So this is what we are going to do. Hopefully, mixing those two layers together are going to mitigate the problem with that wetness and perhaps being a little bit overdone. And in addition, that moisture will help out the part that was a little bit dry so that the worms can finish everything up. And maybe next time we will actually get a for real harvest. If you have any questions, go ahead and put those in the comments below, whether it be about this particular system, red wigglers, or just worm farming in general. Go ahead and put that down in the comments below. Well, thank you guys for hanging out with me and my worms, and everybody have a good day.